one more time is all you said to me. And I swore I heard.
Welcome to another episode of Rise and Thrive. My name is ZACHARIAH Julian. Good morning. Happy Friday. I'm a singer-songwriter from the Hickory Apache Nation located in northern New Mexico, and I have an amazing, a very talented pianist and composer. Please introduce yourself.
CHEE Connor CHEE in CHEE Bilagana Nishta Kiani Bashichin do Italian Dasha CHEE Fizifana Dashanale Good Ego Denehnishle. Good morning, everybody. My name's Connor CHEE. I am a pianist and composer based out of Phoenix. I'm originally from Page, Arizona, but I'm in Phoenix right now. So thank you for having me today.
Of course. What is that instrument behind you? Is that a ukulele? Is that a guitar?
Yes, it is.
You play that as well?
No, I wish I could. I have it in my studio. Actually, my roommate, it's her brother made it. He's a luthier,
awesome.
so he made it for her. So it's on my list of things I want to do. I want to be able to learn to play some guitar, some ukulele.
Yeah, I like that instrument because it always makes me look bigger because I'm like a really tiny dude. So you got that ukulele. And you got your keyboard there too. That's awesome.
Yeah, I've crammed it all into this little home studio space.
I feel you, man. I when I lived in Santa Fe, it was like that. I just had everything kind of just crammed together. Anywho, as I was saying before we started, it's nice to finally talk to you. I've been we became friends on Facebook, and I'm just giving the summary. And I saw your profile picture, and I'm like, is that a piano? And immediately I clicked on your profile, and then I saw your links, and I started checking out your music. You're very talented, man. Like I want to know, like how did you start? What age were you when you started getting into the piano?
I started playing by ear when I was about 5 years old, and I think I got actual piano lessons starting when I was about 6.
Uh,
Yeah, I just started playing by ear, and when my parents saw that I was interested, then they got me lessons, and eventually they got me a piano. So,
was there like a specific song or a type of music you were listening to that really inspired you to pointed you to the piano?
um, I think what kind of drew me towards the piano is my mom had one of those classical compilation like cassette tapes,
Mm.
like the best of the Romantic era or something like that. And so, I listened to that, and I think I was really drawn to that. And they saw that I was interested in classical music because I usually didn't listen to that. I mean, I listened to a lot of other stuff too, but I think that's kind of what got my interest at first. And then my dad got a little not toy, but it was like a little tiny keyboard for Christmas. And I started playing on that by ear. Like after a few months, then my parents got me lessons. So
That's so cool. Like I remember, I went to Farmington, New Mexico. I was like a kid, and we went to a Hastings, and my father bought me like Beethoven's greatest hits on cassette, and that's what got me. I was like, oh man, I really want to play this. And I don't know how it was when you grew up in your circles, but everybody was playing guitar. Like it was just saturated with everybody playing guitar. So I was like, I want to play piano. And it was kind of the same thing. Like my parents were like, "How are we gonna find a piano teacher like, on the reservation?"
yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, it all worked out. That's so cool. Um, so your music, especially your music videos, seeing it visually, your music tied with the music videos, your music is very based on your culture, but it's this modern contemporary style. Like what influenced that? I love how you tie your music with your culture.
Yeah, that was sort of something that happened a little bit by accident, I say, because I started out just as a pianist performing like the traditional classical music, you know what I mean, the Bach, Beethoven, Brahms, Rachmaninoff. And after I got my master's degree, I wanted to come back to Arizona, and I wanted to try and um, record and write down some of the traditional music my grandfather would sing.
Wow.
And that doesn't really fit that well into the music notation that we use.
Yeah.
So I eventually just started kind of composing these original pieces based on some of the things that I heard him doing. So the melodies, or whether it was the rhythms, the structures. So that's how that sort of began. It was kind of a preservation project that sort of shifted into me doing more composing. I mean, I'd done composing in the past. I always took composition classes in college as my electives because I was always interested in it, but I never really considered myself a composer. I first and foremost was just a performer.
Mm.
So then I sort of made that switch, and more people were interested in it, so I kind of kept with it. And then the music videos are a somewhat recent thing. Um, I collaborated for most of them that are out right now. I did as a collaboration with my friend Mikey Jr. He's a YouTuber, and so during the whole COVID lockdown and everything, he actually was here, and he kind of got stuck in Phoenix for a while, and so he ended up staying with us, and we were like, let's try and do some of these music videos since there's the three of us staying together. We can go out in the middle of nowhere and get all this stuff done. So we kind of took advantage of that. It was a lot more difficult than a couple that I'd done before because we had more people to help us move that piano around the desert and do all the other stuff. So there was just 3 or 4 of us for most of it. But yeah, so that's how the music videos kind of came about, and I've got a few more ready to go in the next few weeks. So
It's got this cool style to it, and seriously, people who are listening and watching, check out the music videos. One that really struck me was weaving. Um, the way you played with the rhythm on that song, it just complemented what she was doing the when she was weaving. Like, did you direct her on that, or did you just let her kind of go do her thing and you
uh,
just?
yeah, so Ramona, she's amazingly talented, and I knew he's my friend's mom. And when I was writing the album, I kind of wanted it to be more of a visual album because I knew I was going to be doing these music videos at some point. So I was kind of in my head thinking from a visual aspect of what I know it looks like when somebody's weaving, and to kind of incorporate that into the music. So that was intentional, but I had no idea exactly what she was going to do. So eventually when we went, we just kind of set up the cameras, and we were like, whenever you're ready, come out and just do your thing, and we'll get the footage. And then Mikey, he's amazing at shooting the videos and amazing at editing them together. So we just gave him all this footage that we had because he wasn't even there when we filmed that, and he just put it together to make it fit together. So it worked out really well.
Yeah, the power of editing. It's
Yeah.
it's really good. I highly recommend it. Yeah, go to YouTube or go to his website. But yeah, it's just some. That's one I always end up going back to. The way you play. One of the things that draws me to your music is you play with space, and a lot of musicians kind of don't do that today. They kind of find their little range, and they stay there. And I get it. I get comfortable in my little range as well. But you utilize the entire piano. Uh, you got a beautiful low end here that you just build these beautiful overtones on the top voice. Was that mostly from like Rachmaninoff? Is that from your classical bringing?
I think so. Yeah, a lot of it was just kind of instinct. What sounded good,
Yeah.
and a lot of times there's not much more thought into it than that. When I'm writing these pieces, I can go back, I look at them or listen to them after the fact, or when I'm writing out the sheet music, and I can kind of be like, oh, this is this fits this way for this reason. But a lot of it is just like going with my gut instinct, and I think that's what a lot of musicians do.
Yeah.
You practice, you hone your craft, and you study whatever you study or listen to what you listen to, and it just kind of becomes part of you, to where you're making these choices and decisions just kind of based on instinct, um, not always intentional. At
Yeah,
least for myself.
there's Debussy, like some Debussy elements in that. Is there anybody like other musicians that you kind of pull from? Because your unique style, I think everybody, especially myself, we emulate a lot, it's always through our filter, and that's what I always tell musicians. Like, don't be Tom Waits, don't be Nine Inch Nails. You're your own musician. Just emulate, take from them, and process it through your own filter. Is there any other like composers or modern musicians that you really feel influence your style?
I mean, I think Debussy is one that just comes to mind, or that I, speaking harmonically, as far as like the chords and things like that that are a little different or outside of your traditional harmonies, like a little bit different, nothing like too crazy, but that was kind of what drew me into Debussy's music. So I think that was kind of a natural thing to come out when I was composing my own things.
That's so cool, man. So you were what did you get your masters in? Like tell me.
Piano performance.
Piano
Yeah,
performance.
I went to Eastman for my bachelor's, and then CCM in Cincinnati for my master's. And
May,
yeah,
may,
they're
I,
both in piano performance.
may I ask who your teacher was?
When I was at Eastman, I studied with Rebecca Pennies, and when I was at CCM, I studied with Elizabeth Pridnoff.
Wow. And I'm sure you had the juries and everything like that as well. What was your the juries is pretty much like your final for your performance for those of you who are wondering. Um, who did you what were there select pieces that you did or was it just one big piece?
They had it changed every year. I mean, every year we had our jury in the spring. The first year, I think, obviously was my most stressful because
Oh yeah.
I'd never done the jury. It was so much more stressful than a normal concert or anything.
Yeah.
Like I always stress myself out and get nerves before any concert, but that was 150% of that. And we also had to do a scales jury of like playing all of our scales and like thirds and sixths and tenths and arpeggios. And so I was really nervous about that because I mean, I'd learned scales before, but never really intensely like that. So I was like super. So there was like two parts to that jury, like your scale jury and then the normal jury where you played the music. And then as near the end of my degree, it was like a longer jury. It was a full-on recital for the faculty that was judging. So yeah, it was a little different every year, but I think at first it was like 15 or 20-minute juries, and the last one was like an hour at the end, near the end of my degrees. So
Wow, that's intense. Like I remember I went to the University of New Mexico. That's where I studied theory and composition, and they kind of do it the other way, where it's like you got to prove to them you know your scales and stuff first, which was stressful for me because I came from the res thinking I knew my stuff, and then I hit that brick wall going, oh my god, scales, arpeggiations, inversions, why? Um, and then once I kind of passed that whole thing, uh, getting into finally getting to my my teacher, Pamela Victoria Pyle was my performance my piano teacher. Getting her to like kind of break me, remold me, kind of forget everything I've learned in the past, and just reshaping me to who I am. It was an entire process. Did you kind of experience that too, where you had to unlearn some things?
yeah, it's hard. It's so much harder unlearning something than it is to learn something. That's like what I tell my piano students. I'm like, really be careful when you're first starting out on a piece because if you learn something wrong and you really practice it, it's going to take so much more time to fix it because it's in your muscle memory, like it's in your body, it's in your mind. So yeah, definitely some things I had to break, bad habits and kind of relearn some technique and the way I approach the instrument. But that's the awesome thing about these amazing teachers that they're so important and they've been important in my life because I'd be nowhere without them, without that guidance and all of those things that they pass on. So
That's true. That's very true. Well, let's take a quick short break here. USALA Radio, Rise and Thrive. ZACHARIAH Julie, Connor CHEE is my guest today, and we'll continue our conversation in a bit.
Take me out one more time is all you said to me. And I swore I heard.
That song is, the producer was saying, "Don't smile" in that song. Um, it's like a little pop song I wrote like years ago in D major. It's just the most adorable thing. I play it now, and I'm like, "Oh, what was I thinking?" Um, so back to the juries. For people who are watching, listening, like I said, it's like your final for performance majors and performers. Um, and you're right. Like the biggest show I've ever done in front of people there was like in front of 2,000 people, and I was okay. Like you get those nerves, and once you get on the stage, they all kind of fade because you're focusing on your craft and your instrument. But doing those juries and playing in front of like four people, like the faculty, 10 times more terrifying. Um, was there any like you have any stories like you're talking about your first time like doing it? Like what was your first piece that you performed for your juries?
Oh, I don't even remember. I think I played like a few Chopin etudes and I think maybe a Haydn sonata.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it was stressful, and also I was still struggling with my sense of time. I was talking to a friend yesterday about how your your sense of time is so different when you're performing, like from the performer's side of things versus the audience. And every 1 second feels like 5 seconds. If you take a pause and you think it was like the longest pause ever. And when I started recording myself, like to do competitions and audition for things, I'd go and play through my rep, and then go back and listen to it. And I'd be like, what in the world was I doing? I was playing so fast, like way faster than I thought I was playing, and that was causing me to struggle. So I had to really kind of, it's hard to step outside of yourself when you're on stage. So yeah, that was definitely like the first step into that. Trying
Yeah.
to really kind of understand how time was flowing for me as a performer, and as when I was nervous and all of those kinds of things. It was different.
Yeah, it's such an interesting feeling being on the stage. I suffered from the same thing. It was, and I was going to say, recording. That's exactly what you got to do as artists. Any of you who are wondering, record yourself, record your performances, because performing it and then listening to it, it's like hearing your own voice when you speak. You're going, oh God, that's me. It's the exact same thing, but with a piano.
Yeah. My teacher, I remember her telling us in a master class one time, she was like, everybody, you should be recording yourself. So this week, in the practice room, record yourself and then listen back. And after you're done crying about it, then you can start to get to work on all the stuff that you don't like about it, which was good advice, because I mean, I always cringed at listening to myself. So it was hard. I never imagined, ever in my future that I'd be recording stuff. Playing live was one thing for me because I was like, it's one and done. But like having that recording that exists forever, I never thought I'd be releasing anything. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you've gone on quite a journey there. That's amazing. Like, do you have any big plans for like what you're doing next? Are you doing another album? Are you? I mean, you talked about doing these music videos.
Yeah, the music videos right now I've been doing. I mean, that's the great thing about music. Like you never know what it's going to be when you graduate, or if you don't even go to school. Like you don't know where your path's going to take you. So I finished up this last album, released it back in August, and since then I've been working on some other stuff. I just finished up a commission. I wrote a piece for bassoon and marimba that's going to be
Wow.
recorded by Jackie Wilson and her husband Chris. They are at Washington State University, and I'm working on right now. Well, I just finished up scoring a short documentary, and I'm doing a couple other short film scores, and then I'm getting to work on another commission. I'm writing some pieces for piano for the piano professor at Eastern Michigan University, Joel Shanehouse. So he's gonna perform these pieces, I think, next year. So I'm gonna get those finished up soon and see what happens after that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so happy for you. That's congratulations. That's
Thank you.
amazing. Yeah. When I first started, like when I left the reservation, I studied in Santa Fe for 5 years at the community college, and then I transferred to University in New Mexico. There were no, I didn't know any native pianists like at all. I knew they were out there. Like I didn't think I was the only one. Uh, but then I met Renata Yazzie, uh, the pianist. I met her on Christmas Eve. I think it was Christmas Eve or Thanksgiving Eve. I don't remember. She was playing at the Isleta Casino for the guests as they came in, and I'm like, hey, it's a native pianist. Oh my god! And it was cool that I got to meet her, and then I got to meet you, um, and just really kind of embraced what you're doing as a musician and a composer. Um, so yeah, it makes me happy seeing accomplished Native American composers, pianists, making it like you are. Um,
That's
that's
a great
amazing.
thing about social media now, is because I mean I felt the same way when I was starting out. Like, there's got to be other native, pianists out there, but there was not always a way to connect. So since social media has blown up so much, with all the terrible things that have come with that, that some people say, the good thing is that it's been a lot easier to connect with other musicians, other native musicians, and people like Renata and yourself and these other musicians that I think otherwise I might not have ever connected with if it wasn't
Exactly.
for that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, like I said, I saw your profile and I'm like, is that a piano? And then yeah, I was checking it out. So yeah, good job on your promoting yourself. I mean, you got the picture for it. It's amazing.
Thanks.
So what else do you do outside of piano? Like who are you outside of your instrument?
That's a hard question.
Do you like writing? Do you do photography?
I used to do photography. I did it a lot. I enjoy it. I think I would like to get more into like filmmaking. I
Mhm.
love movies. I love watching movies, and I love listening to the music. And so, like, doing film scores is something I've always wanted to do since I was a kid. Just because I was always so interested in how those things worked together. And yeah, so I'm super grateful I'm able to kind of dip into that a little bit recently. Um, but yeah, that's something that I really like. I definitely enjoy that form of art.
Yeah. No, the reason I asked you is because I was going to say I guarantee you're going to get into film, um, because you kind of understand the visual aspect of it, the rhythm of good filmmaking. It comes out in your music. So you already have that layer, that template there. Now you just got to add the visual, and you have a great editor already. So
Yeah, super lucky. I lucked out.
one of the fun things, I released a new album in April, and I got to write my first horror song, um, which I've always wanted to do. Like I never knew how to kind of get into that. Is there any other different style you like to break out into?
Yeah, I'll pretty much anything, honestly. That's kind of the weird thing, I guess, about me in
Mm.
my music. I mean, a lot of what I do, like my main thing is, the stuff on the piano, composing, but I've produced a few other things. Some like I did like an R&B collaboration with somebody and some
Really?
experimental electronic stuff. Uh, Going into the filmmaking, I did one of the short films was like a horror film. The one
Okay.
that I'm about to work on is like an action film, and they're asking for something totally outside of what I've ever done before. So yeah, I'm like open to everything, and I listen to a ton of different types of music. So
Yeah. Wow. Are there any like modern like movie composers that you really kind of get drawn to?
I growing up, I mean, John Williams was always like my big inspiration because he did so much amazing music. It was very rooted like in a classical style, so I related to that
Mm.
as well. But also, it was just a great variety, and he was just so good at what he did. I really like the music of Hans Zimmer. That's sort of a little bit in the other direction, as far as the experimental things uh, that he does in his music and the films that he does. It's really awesome. It's just interesting to me too. I'm constantly on YouTube or like masterclass.com watching either like these documentaries or interviews, masterclasses with these composers and other musicians. It's so interesting to see the differences, but also the things that are similar between everybody. So
Wow. That's uh, one of the great, like you're talking about Hans Zimmer, his kind of experiments with music. I think one of my favorite pieces is actually Inception, even though everybody makes fun of the bomb. But if you actually research why that bomb exists, and how he wrote it, using an old piece of music and how it ties into the movie, that's brilliant. So yeah, you got some good teachers there, man.
another great thing about the internet, there's so much
Yeah,
information that you can just type it in a search bar and it's all there for you.
yeah. And once you kind of start sorting through it, like the algorithm kind of figures you out and goes, oh, you might, yeah,
Hmm.
you might dig this. Um, I always kind of grew up with the weird movies like David Lynch movies, Terry Gilliam from Monty Python. Love their style and the way they approach cinema. Um, and and a lot of these people tend to be musicians as well. So you as a filmmaker, I can just imagine what it is that you're gonna do. You said you made a horror movie. Is it like a little?
Yeah, it was actually my friend who I met when I was in Cincinnati. I was going to the performing arts school there. I started there in like the fourth grade, but I became great friends with her name's Tatiana Godfrey, and so she was just now finishing up her master's degree in dramaturgy. So part of her master's thesis was to do this short film, and it was all based on a like an illumination manuscript, Dutch manuscript from like the 14th century, depicting like the seven deadly sins. You know what I mean? So she wrote this film and she produced it and asked if I do the music. So I was super excited about it. Yeah, so she just finished that up a couple weeks ago, I think. She presented it.
Without giving too much away, like what kind of styles did you tap into with you when it comes to the music?
It was largely just, well, obviously piano based, but that was when I talked to her, that was kind of what she had in mind. She was like, I think what she specifically said was something similar to Philip Glass, like minimalist piano music to kind of build this unsettling vibe throughout the film. So that was kind of the direction I started with. You know, that's what I went with.
Wow, that's so cool. Like I remember I was living in Santa Fe when Amelie, that movie came out, and Philip Glass exploded, and it made me happy because like everybody kind of figured out who Philip Glass was finally. And
Yeah,
yeah, that's interesting. You definitely, I'm sure you're gonna share when that comes out.
yeah.
Uh,
I don't know if she posted it yet, but yeah, I
oh,
think she has. I know she
okay.
like live streamed it for her when she presented it for the thesis, but I think she's finishing up the last part of that now, so it
uh,
should be up somewhere
but
streaming.
when I started, that was my dream, is I wanted to be a movie composer. Um, and then I got into singing, and then it changed everything. And I still wanted to get into the movie. And I think the thing in music today is like you see people like Nine Inch Nails and Radiohead, Tom York. They're doing movies now. They just did like Trent Reznor just won an Oscar for Soul. Uh, that piano playing. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but the piano playing in there is pretty good. It's really good actually. And seeing people who come from this kind of rock genre, this popular music, this mainstream music, moving into the movie industry, and it's very refreshing. It gives it this new sense of like, ah, thank you. Anyway, we'll take another quick break here, and we'll continue our discussion with Connor CHEE. This is USALA Radio on Rise and Thrive.
Take me out one more time is all you said to me. And I swore I heard.
So, do you think, talking about your music, do you think you'll ever sing to any of your pieces?
Um, I'm not sure. I've done some singing, in the past outside of, again, like I always have these other side projects that I do. Um, it's something I've thought about. I mean, in my last album, I ended up like playing some Native American flute. That's not anything I've ever done before. It was part of the plan for the album, but then with COVID, I was like, I guess I'm gonna have to do this myself, figure it out to do these like flute interludes that I wanted to have in the album. So I don't know if at some point that it falls into place, I might.
Yeah, like it's the flute is very interesting because your music is it's chord based. You have these beautiful kind of collections and these decorations that you do, especially in the top voice here. Uh, Moving from those chords into more of a linear kind of melody when it comes to flute, was that tricky for you?
A little bit, but one of the hard things with the piano is playing melodically or kind of imitating a voice because you don't have that same breath or ability that a lot of other instruments do. Like you hit the key, and once you hit it, it immediately starts dying away. So being able to kind of shape the melodies in a different way was it was kind of nice actually. Have a little bit of breath control and do things that you just can't do some things on the piano. There's like little tricks that kind of mimic it, but you can't really play a note on the piano and have it blossom. Like it's just going to die away. So you've got to kind of write around that style. So it
Yeah.
was one of the nice things about the flute that I liked.
You could just sustain it. Just keep
Yeah.
this. Yeah, that's awesome. Um, the like the music that kind of influenced me. Like I started in a metal band. I was a lead singer in a metal band when I was a kid. I was angry, and then I fell in love with piano, and just really kind of started focusing on that. And I didn't really take it seriously um, until like 2009. But I've been playing piano for years prior to that. When did you know that the piano was your instrument?
Um, I think the piano, and I was drawn to it. That's what I wanted to do, and I started out lessons. But it wasn't until I was 10 when I moved to Cincinnati to go to the performing arts school there, and that was kind of when I had to make a decision because my parents made a big sacrifice to move from Page, Arizona, to Cincinnati so I could go to this school. But it was a similar thing that you described earlier. Like we were, in this border town, like right by the res, and it's a small town. There was like one or two piano teachers there. And so eventually my parents were driving me to Flagstaff. It was about 2 hour drive to get from Page to Flagstaff on the weekends for my lesson and then 2 hours back. So eventually when I got the opportunity to audition for the school in Cincinnati, that was when I kind of had to make a choice. Like, hey, are you really serious about trying to do this music thing? Are you really going to stick with the piano? Like, it was kind of a hard thing because I was so young to make like a big decision like that. But that's when I really knew, like, okay, I've got to really buckle down and this is going to be my thing now. I have to be serious about this. My parents can't just give up all of this stuff and move us across the country, give up their jobs and everything and start over in Cincinnati just so I can like fool around on the instrument a little bit. I really had to start taking it even more seriously then. So
Wow, that's a lot of pressure. But that. I mean, you chose the right thing. You're good at it.
I was
one of the
super
things,
grateful. Yeah.
yeah, one of the things. No, seriously, like my parents, they really got behind me. Like do this. Um, especially when I started doing like talent shows on the reservation, and people were like, "Oh, he plays piano. That's awesome." So I think once they started realizing that I had an outlet for these complex emotions. How old were you when you first composed your first piece?
The first, I think I was maybe like 6 years old when I first started like making up my own. I mean, that's kind of how I started, like playing by ear, making up my own little things. And my music teacher at school knew I was interested, and so there was some kind of a district, like state of Arizona, I think maybe competition to submit like music. So I didn't know how to write it down. So she helped. I came after school and she helped me kind of write down my little pieces that I composed. Yeah, when I was like, I think I was like 6 or 7, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you do, do you remember any of them? I don't remember any of mine.
Um, I did. I remembered one of them when I was doing one of my albums because I kind of took one of those themes and moved it around a little bit. When I was sitting here, like I was sitting in the studio looking for some inspiration, on this next piece, and I just thought back to one of those. I don't know why that. I wrote a few things, but there was one that just kind of stuck around in my head that I ended up using and kind of building a piece around it. So
Wow. Yeah, I remember a phrase from like one of my big pieces. It was called "Falling Again," and it was just this kind of cheesy A minor with a ninth. Uh, like I thought my world had changed. I mean, my world did change when I discovered ninths. And then I started taking theory, and I'm like, oh, that's nothing. Try 13ths or 11ths. Those are fun. So you brought up that you have students. You're a teacher. So how many students do you have?
at the moment, a lot of my students stopped lessons for a while due to COVID. But at the moment, I've got I think like 5 or 6 right now that I'm teaching. There was a time when I had a lot of students. Like when I was working on my master's degree, I think I had around 40 piano students that I taught every
serious?
week. Yeah.
Oh my god.
So I got kind of burnt out on it after that. I mean, just because I was doing so many other things, and it's hard to juggle having like a performing career and teaching because if I'm out of town, I got to cancel lessons, and then everybody's schedule has to be rotated around. So I kind of backed off and kept it, around a max of 10 students, I think, uh, in the past few years. So right now it's about 5 or 6.
Wow. I had 40 students. Like I think the most I had at one point was 4. And I'm like, this is so much. I can't deal with you all. Show up on time. Practice. So I can imagine doing that to 40 students.
Yeah, looking back, I was like, I don't know how I did it because I was working for, it was actually like a lessons company that did music lessons in your home. So I was also driving to all of these students'
Oh my
homes.
god.
So like every week I was driving to 40 different houses all around the greater Cincinnati area while I was still working on my master's degree, and I had a couple other part-time jobs. So
Did you
after
sleep?
that, I was like, not much. During that time, I did not sleep much, no.
I really enjoy having students. I've learned so much from them. I learned so much about myself. Like I just constantly hear my teacher's voice in my head now. And I'm like, oh, I was so lazy. Like she was right. Like just seeing how much you've grown and the faults that you still kind of have and kind of deal with and right around dealing with these students. Do you? I'm sure you have that same.
Absolutely. Yeah. I learn a ton from my students. And that's the great thing about teaching, because you're also teaching yourself. When you have to sit back and reflect on how you do something, when a student's struggling with something, and you have to kind of like look, internally, like, how do I approach this problem myself? You never, until you teach, a lot of times you don't have that situation where you have to ask that question. You just kind of do what you do. So it's been a lot of reflecting on my own journey with music, and in teaching students, and just the amount of different personalities and creativity that you encounter in lessons. It really is a blessing.
Yeah, I mean, and it sounds cheesy, but it's inspiring. I mean, your students do inspire you because you want to get better, not only for yourself but for them, to kind of understand them, pull yourself, start thinking outside of that box. It's a beautiful thing, man. Do you have like with the culture? Are you ever going to go back and like start kind of teaching there? I have all these plans. I want to go back to my reservation, kind of set up like workshops and like kind of scholarships and stuff like that. Is that something
Yeah.
you would be interested in? Yeah.
It's something that I want to do. I want to be able to, I mean, ultimately, I'd like to do some kind of a small music festival somewhere on the reservation, and other kinds of outreach. And Renata's doing this great thing too with her scholarship fund that she's just started up, and I think that's really important. I was so fortunate to have my parents be willing to make the sacrifices, and being in a position that they were able to make these sacrifices for me. Like, I was very lucky that I could get the education that I did. Not everybody has that opportunity to just, oh, you can't get lessons here and you really want to do music, well, we'll just move to somewhere that has music teachers. That's not a reality for most people. So I definitely want to try and bring that back and create more opportunities, because there's so much talent, especially on the reservation, that's a lot of times not developed like it should be, because those opportunities aren't there. So
Yeah, I mean that's very true. Like, and seeing, like, I just turned 40 recently, and I'm looking kind of, I don't know, having these kind of like looking back at my life and seeing the people who I was surrounded with as I was growing up and the influences I had, and just the amount of talent that's there, and some of it just kind of goes to waste, unfortunately. And that's one of the reasons it's really inspiring me to kind of go back and be like, I'll help as much as I can. I'll do whatever. I've been very fortunate. Um, so I'm glad you're doing that, man. That's amazing. Uh, but yeah, the
thank
music
you.
festival. Yeah, I'll let me know, man. I'll come out and play.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I'm talking to Renata, and people are watching and streaming. Interviewed Renata. It was one of the first interviews I did for Rise and Thrive. Um, and she's doing this thing where she's taking the Navajo language and implementing the terminology, the music terminology, like triplets,
Yeah,
stuff like that, and into Navajo, and it's so cool.
it's
Are you?
amazing.
Yeah, that's so cool.
I was kind of thinking like because we talked about that and we stay in touch a lot and she has this whole glossary of music terms in Navajo. I'm like kind of considering like should I go back through my scores and be using this stuff because why not? I mean half the time we're still using like these Italian terms that a lot of people don't know, until you take music lessons and figure out what's going on. I'm like I don't know why sometimes we are
Yeah,
so stuck and rooted in that tradition. Why not take it a different direction? I don't know. It's really exciting the things that she's doing.
yeah. No, I'm very proud of her. We kind of had, we came from two schools of thought. Um, her teacher's German, I think, and mine was from Berkeley. My teacher. So we had this kind of, it was the way I always looked at it, and this is me coming from my perspective, is it was like fire. It was my teacher, and you have this kind of very contained emotion. It was like a contained fire when it came to his teaching style. How many piano teachers have you had in your life?
I think mm, maybe like six.
Wow.
Yeah, since I was little.
And I'm sure you've learned little things from each and every one of them.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's kind of the nice thing about music and taking lessons is it is kind of like the American dream where you start with nothing and you kind of collect all these things along the way from all these amazing teachers and everybody has a little bit different point of view but you end up after all of these years kind of building your own little thing out of all these little bits of information that you pick up along the way.
yeah. Uh, my first teacher, her name was Sandy Pixley. Um, she was from Michigan, and she moved from Michigan to my reservation to teach. So very fortunate. But learning from her, she kind of just taught me the basics, and then I moved to Santa Fe in 2000. I started learning from this guy named Sergio, and this guy was cool. You would have loved this guy. He would I had to take lessons at his house, so he would sit there, and he would have this little glass of brandy, and he'd be like, "Play Chopin," and like he wouldn't say a word. He would just sit there with the brandy, and he wouldn't drink it. He would just sit there with it. He's a fascinating character.
Hmm.
And then eventually, I got Pamela Victoria Pyle, who just was like, "You need to let go, Zach. Like, forget everything. Just feel the music." She's very emotional based. Um, I'm sure you got many different aspects from your teachers. Like,
Oh yeah.
'cause you understand the emotion, and that's what I was trying to get at is uh, talking. I work with a lot of musicians, and the ones I work with, the ones I pick, are the ones that understand emotion. You get that, like it's innate in you, and that's why your music is as good as it is. Not just outside of technical aspect of it. The emotion that you're able to convey in your music is great. But anyway, we'll take another quick short break, and we'll get back to finishing our conversation with Connor Chee. It's Rise and Thrive on USALA Radio.
Take me out one more time is all you said to me. And I swore
So yeah, talking about emotion, uh, how important it is to music. I don't think a lot of people outside of music don't understand that. It's like, well, oh, you're playing an instrument, so the emotion just comes. I'm like, no, 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 no. Like there's two different brains. So was that something that you immediately understood when you first kind of start writing? I mean, I know when you were a kid, it's kind of hard to remember that, but do you remember like people coming up to you going, "Oh, yeah, that really spoke to me," or "I saw imagery"?
Yeah, the emotional I was definitely an emotional I'm an emotional person.
Mhm.
I was emotional first and foremost, I think, in my approach to music. I struggled with the technical side of
Yeah,
it at first. So that was something I kind of had to put together as I went along, how to relate those two things, because I realized like no matter how much I felt a feeling, that didn't mean it was necessarily going to come through the instrument, and I had to kind of
yeah,
really pick it apart in a very like scientific approach to if I'm trying to convey this emotion, what do I have to do physically, like mechanically, with this instrument to convey it? Because just feeling it harder did not always translate. I mean, sometimes it can help with your sense of time and your choices that you make, but also like, there's that technical aspect of taking that emotional side and that marriage with like the logical side to really make an effective performance. So I think that's really what I spent a lot of time doing with my teachers, was figuring out how the instrument worked and how to do what I wanted to do, like how I felt. Like I knew what I wanted to do. And now I have students who a lot of students who are the other way, who they're really amazing, technically, and then they have to go the other direction. Whereas like figuring out the emotion, the intent behind it, and kind of go the other way. But that I was the opposite. I struggled with the technical aspects
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, as did I. Like it was learning the theory, learning the what I was doing. Like, oh, that's a C sharp minor and second version. Like none of that. I'm like, I don't care. It sounds this way. Um, and talking about emotion, that's the beautiful thing about music. Like I've tried to leave music many times when I was younger, like, but it just kept coming back. And now I've just accepted it. It's my friend. It's a part of me, and it allows me to process these complex emotions when it comes to like depression or anxiety. Um, and the more you do it, the more you can kind of tame it, and you understand how to stimulate that side of you, that artistic side. Like I want to write a sad piece, well, I got to make myself sad, and just pulling yourself in and out of that. Do you have techniques like that as well?
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, when I'm writing music, sometimes it's because I feel something, but sometimes it's because I want to write music and I don't know where it comes from. So sometimes I struggle with like really getting into that mindset. Once I get there, I can usually, keep in that flow state for a while. But sometimes it's a lot of just sitting and waiting for inspiration to come, or doing all these other things. But, I always look to other musicians to find that inspiration when I'm struggling. When I know I want to do something, I can go on YouTube, or, listen to the music, watch the other interviews, and see all sorts of different types of art. And that usually is a good way to kind of inspire myself to get into that state.
Yeah. Like when I was writing this new album, um, I intentionally didn't sleep just to see, because I wanted this kind of anxiety ridden song, but I was like, how do I do that? When do I feel the most anxiety? And I was like, when I don't sleep. And so like I did that, and seeing what came out was just fascinating.
Yeah.
It's wild. We'll start wrapping up, but I was wondering what advice you have for a native youth picking up that piano or guitar for the first time.
I think uh, really trusting in yourself. I say this just because that's something I struggled with when I was starting out. Like you said, there weren't a lot of other native pianists out there to look up to. If I wanted to do that, I kind of always had this self doubt, like, I'm not going to be able to do this. Like, I like the piano, but I want to do it for my career, but it's just not possible. I just wasn't born gifted, or, I'm always comparing myself to everyone else, and a lot of people had more opportunities. And so I think just really getting out of your own way and doing whatever you can along the way. Like I said, there's so much information out there now. If you can get your hands on it, take advantage of it, and just really kind of trust in yourself. And yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
the big thing. I got in my way so much when I was younger, and so caught up in my head. I still do it now, but I just think how much more I could have done, maybe, or I could have taken advantage of, if I hadn't been stopping myself because I thought I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't worthy, and all these other things. If I'd have just gotten that out of my head from the start, I think it would have been, you know, a lot more opportunities that I could have taken advantage of. So
yeah. I mean, that's well said. We truly are our worst enemies. Like we hear things that other people don't hear, and it's because we're in the forest.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's a tricky thing.
Definitely is. So we were talking about your future projects. You're doing some more music videos. And you got some movies that you're working on. Like what is the big goal for you? Like what's the big fish? Because you've already done so much.
I think just like continuing to challenge myself in what I do, because that's the best thing is to do something that I can't even think about yet. Something different, something new, something I hadn't planned on. So, in that sense, I have no idea what I want to do next, other than just be open to these other opportunities as they come along and really try and run with it. Even the ones that I'm, a little apprehensive about, like, can I do this? Am I even going to be able to do this? Like, you know what? Give it my best shot and see what happens and see where I end up. It's kind of this weird, twisty path that I take with music, which is the exciting part about it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
As
we'll
an
see where I end
artist,
up.
yeah, exactly. I was going to say that as an artist, I realized everything kind of started falling into place the more I let go and like just let the wind hit and just take me where I need to go. People
Exactly.
will show up at your door, and they find you in random ways,
Yeah.
and that is just exposure and word of mouth. So yeah, I'm really proud of you, man. That's amazing. I look forward to meeting you one day.
Well, thank
Definitely
you.
do a show together. Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, intimidating. It's amazing in a good way, artistic, friendship way. Same when I hear Renata Yazzie play too. I'm like, she's so good.
She's great. She's amazing.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't want to play it. So let's talk about where people can find your stuff, like your socials, your website. Yeah, let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, my website, ConnorChee.com. That's kind of got everything there. But a lot of my social media is just that. Search my name, Connor Chee, Instagram, YouTube, whatever other myriad of social media I have floating around out there. I'm terrible at Twitter. I need to get I have one. I just hardly ever go on there. But like I said, yeah, my website has all my music, my links to stream or download, and all the other stuff. My videos.
So you have that all on your website. So you get the albums on all the platforms, right?
Yes.
That's amazing. What's the name of the album?
The most recent album I did was Scenes from Dineta. And I did two before that, Emergence and the Navajo Piano.
What does Dineta mean?
It's like the homeland of the Navajo people. Among the people, I think, is the translation that they usually give. But yeah, the album was just kind of little pieces that are depictions of, the Navajo reservation as I experienced it.
That's beautiful. That's a well-conceived album there, especially as your first album. Just kind of introducing yourself to the world. It's very important to kind of have that who you are and the culture that you bring. I think it's very important to artists. We tend to need to go back in order to go forward, because finding yourself as an artist, that's very important, and you've done a really good job of that. So seeing what's going to come to you in the future, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what you do. It's going to be very interesting. Yeah. So please share when some of your stuff comes out, and we'll definitely check it out, and I'll share it as well. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'll definitely be posting it up on my social media, my websites, and everything. So we'll see what happens next.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for this great conversation. Thank you for waking up early. I'm not a morning person. I don't know about you. So.
I'm usually going to bed in the morning. Like this time, I'm a night owl.
Me too, man. I got about 4 hours of sleep, so I'm hurting pretty good. But yeah, I get to talk to amazing artists like you. So
I really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you in the future. And thank you so much, Connor Chee. And you have any last words?
I don't think so. Just thank you so much for having me on. It's always great to be able to just have a conversation with someone about music, and yeah, it's been really nice. I appreciate it.
Especially like somebody who understands. Like I totally get. Like that's why I like doing this. I get to talk to amazing musicians and artists like yourself. But yeah, so thank you for joining us on another episode of Rise and Thrive. I have another special guest in 2 weeks, and so please stick around for that. Thank you so much, Connor Chee.
Thank you.
Radio.
Take me out one more time is all you said to me.